Story 1, submitted by Caleb R. from Haskell County, Kansas. I've lived my whole life on the southern edge of Haskell County, where the land is so flat it feels like God pressed his palm against the earth and smoothed everything out. Out here, fog isn't common. We get dust storms, windstorms, thunderstorms that roll over the prairie like a freight train. But fog, real fog, the kind that blankets everything, is rare enough that we talk about it when it happens. The night I'm about to tell you about was in late October, 3 years back. I'd been helping my neighbor Vernon load hay bales in his field because his son had sprained his back wrestling some steer. I stayed longer than I meant to, and by the time I started my truck, the temperature had dropped a good 15 degrees. I figured the sudden chill was why the fog started rolling in from the north. At first, it looked like a thin gray line stretching across the horizon, harmless. Pretty even. But as I drove down County Road 14, the fog thickened unnaturally fast. So fast it looked like it was crawling toward me, pulled along the dirt like it had weight. I slowed to maybe 15 miles an hour. My headlights punched 2 weak tunnels into the haze. Even the familiar shapes of fence posts beside the road disappeared into milky nothing. I kept thinking about how the fog wasn't supposed to come in from the north. Everyone around here knows it usually comes off the river to the east. But this was spilling over the wheat fields like it had decided on a direction for reasons of its own. About 5 miles from my place, I saw something up ahead. 2 figures. They were standing in the middle of the road. I braked hard enough that everything in the passenger seat slid off with a thud. The fog was so thick that even with my high beams on, I couldn't see them clearly, just silhouettes. One tall, one shorter, both facing me. Neither moved. My first thought was that someone had hit a deer or had car trouble, but there was no vehicle around them, no lights, no reflective tape on clothes. Nothing. I rolled my window down halfway and called out, "Hey, you all right out here?" No answer. The taller figure stepped forward. The shorter one didn't move at all. I felt this jolt of fear then. Not a rational fear, just something instinctive. I've lived around people who get drunk and wander the roads. I've picked up stranded motorists. I've dealt with coyotes and lost cattle in the dark. None of that scared me like this did. Something was wrong with the way they stood, too still. Like scarecrows pretending to be people. I eased my foot off the brake and crept forward, planning to stop a good distance away and try again. But as soon as my truck inched forward, both figures stepped backward in perfect unison, disappearing into the fog like they'd been swallowed. I slammed the brakes again. I don't know why. Maybe I expected them to reappear. Maybe I was hoping they were just disoriented locals who'd gotten turned around. But the way they moved, synchronized like that, it felt staged. I rolled the window up and locked the doors without meaning to. Pure instinct. About 30 seconds later, my radio, which had been off, crackled to life with heavy static. I almost jumped. I reached to turn it off, but beneath the static, I heard something faint. A voice, not singing, not talking, more like whispering. Rapid, urgent, like someone trying to speak through a mouthful of gravel. The fog pressed against the truck like a heavy blanket. I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. I debated turning around, but the road was too narrow and the ditches on either side were deep as graves. One wrong move and I'd be stuck until someone found me in the morning. The whispering on the radio grew clearer, then stopped entirely. What replaced it was a single hollow knock, coming from the bed of my truck. I froze, both hands locked on the wheel. Another knock. Slow. Deliberate. Something was back there. I didn't look. I don't think I could have forced myself to, but I pressed my foot on the gas lightly, trying not to fishtail in the dirt. The truck crawled forward. 10 feet, 20. The knocking kept pace with the movement, like whatever was back there was shifting its weight. I don't know how long I drove like that. Maybe 2 minutes, maybe 10. But then I spotted something through the wall of fog, the shape of my mailbox. A dark smudge on the right side of the road. I'd never been so relieved to see something so ordinary. Just as I started to turn into my driveway, the knocking stopped. The truck bed thunked as if something heavy jumped out. I didn't see anything in my mirrors, just fog. I pulled up to the house, jumped out, and sprinted inside. Locking the door felt like muscle memory. I grabbed my phone and called Vernon, told him the fog was crazy and to stay inside. He thought I was exaggerating. He even laughed a little, but I didn't care. I didn't sleep at all that night. The fog didn't lift until almost 10 the next morning. When it finally burned off, I went out to check the truck. The bed was bone dry but covered in long smudges, marks like someone had dragged their palms all over the metal. Not scratches, smudges, too large to be from a raccoon, too deliberate to be from tree branches. On the road near my driveway, I saw footprints, 2 sets. Barefoot, human-shaped, but wrong somehow. Each print seemed too long, the toes stretched out like they'd been pulled forward. They led from the road into the field across from my house and disappeared about 30 feet in, like the fog had picked them back up. I've never reported it. What would I even say? 2 people who didn't move right climbed into my truck bed and whispered at me through static. But every year since then, at the end of October, that same fog rolls in. Always from the north, always thicker than anything we get the rest of the year. And every time it rises, I swear I see 2 shapes waiting at the edge of the fields. Not moving, not waving, just waiting for the fog to get thick enough that nothing feels human anymore. Story 2, submitted by Marlene V. from Tolland, Massachusetts. I grew up in the western hill towns of Massachusetts, the kind of place where the nearest grocery store is a 20-minute drive and the forests feel older than the houses. When people imagine rural New England, they think of bright foliage and postcard landscapes. But in late November, when hunting season tapers off and the weather hasn't fully committed to winter, the woods take on a strange gray emptiness. That's when the fog settles low in the valleys, thick, wet, muffling. My story happened 4 years ago, during one of those strange in-between weeks. I was living with my mother then, helping her recover after a bad fall on our porch steps. She refused to hire a nurse, insisted she could handle herself with a walker, so I came home from Worcester to stay for a while. Honestly, I didn't mind. Life felt quieter there, predictable. I liked chopping wood, feeding the wood stove, listening to the peepers in the swamp behind our house. The night everything went wrong, my mother asked me to go check on our neighbor, old Mr. Delaney. He lived alone in a sagging farmhouse down the unpaved road, maybe a half-mile from us. He hadn't picked up his mail in 2 days, and she was worried. He'd been in the hospital that summer for breathing issues. I figured she was just being cautious. A fog had rolled in earlier that afternoon, thicker than I'd ever seen. The kind that swallows sound. You know how when someone walks across a yard, you hear the grass or twigs crack? That night, nothing made any noise, not even my boots on the dirt. I took a flashlight and headed down the road. The beam hit the fog like it was something solid. I kept it low just to see my own feet. Mr. Delaney's house appeared slowly out of the haze. No lights on. His old Ford pickup was parked crooked in the driveway, door slightly open. That was the first thing that made my stomach go tight. I called out, "Mr. Delaney, it's Marlene. Everything all right?" No answer. The fog made the air feel thick in my throat, like breathing through cloth. I stepped up onto the porch, noticing the boards had fresh scratches, thin, parallel, as if something had dragged claws lightly across them. I told myself maybe raccoons had been digging for grubs. I knocked once, twice. Still nothing. The weird thing, the door wasn't locked. Inside, the smell hit me first. Damp wood and something faintly metallic. The air felt colder than outside. My flashlight bounced off dusty picture frames, stacks of newspapers, and a narrow hallway lined with antlers mounted on plaques. Mr. Delaney was the kind of hunter who kept everything he ever shot. "Hello?" I said again. I heard something then, a faint shifting sound from deeper inside the house. A pause, then a dragging noise. Slow, uneven. I felt that same instinctive fear you get when you're sure someone's in the room with you even if you can't see them. My flashlight shook in my hand. I stepped forward anyway. The living room was empty. though a lamp had been knocked off a table and the recliner was positioned at a strange angle, like someone had left it in a hurry. The dragging sound came again, and this time I could tell it was coming from the kitchen. "Mr. Delaney?" My voice cracked. "Are you hurt?" I edged into the kitchen, sweeping the flashlight left to right, and I saw him. Or at least I saw his legs. Bare, pale calves stretched out on the linoleum, one slipper a few feet away. His upper body was hidden behind the counter island. I rushed forward, already dialing 911 on my phone. The fog outside pressed against the windows, making the whole house feel sealed in with me. But when I knelt down and leaned around the island, expecting to see him unconscious, I froze. Mr. Delaney wasn't alone. Something was holding him. At first, my brain insisted it was just a person. Maybe someone trying to help him. Maybe a burglar. Maybe a confused neighbor. But the shape wasn't right. It was crouched over him, long limbs folded in too many angles, its back rising unnaturally high like its spine was arched in the wrong direction, and its head was buried against his chest like it was listening for a heartbeat or smelling him. My light must have hit it at a bad angle because it jerked its head up sharply. I didn't get a clear look at its face, just the impression of something stretched, gray, too smooth. No hair, no shine in the eyes. Like fog condensed into the shape of a person but forgetting how a human should look. I scrambled back so fast I slammed into the pantry door. My flashlight clattered on the floor but stayed lit. The thing unfolded itself, stood up in this horrible slow motion, limbs dangling too long, like it was remembering how to use them. Then it turned toward me. Its face didn't have features, just faint impressions, like someone had pressed their fingers into clay where eyes should be. But I felt it looking at me, felt it the way you feel heat through glass. My phone slipped from my hand. I didn't even realize I'd dropped it until I saw the screen crack. The thing stepped toward me, quiet as mist. And then, this part still doesn't make sense, it backed away, as if something outside called to it, its head tilted, listening. The fog at the windows thickened, pulsing against the glass like it was alive. After a few seconds, the thing turned from me and drifted, back toward the kitchen door that led to the porch. Its shape blurred at the edges, thinning out as it moved. By the time it reached the doorway, it was almost indistinguishable from the fog outside. Then it was gone completely. My breath came back in gasps. I crawled to Mr. Delaney. His chest wasn't rising. I fumbled for a pulse, but his skin was too cold. By the time the EMTs arrived, 20 minutes later, the fog had lifted enough to see the treetops. They said Mr. Delaney had likely passed earlier that evening. Natural causes, they told me, likely a heart issue. I told them what I saw, the shape, the thing that had been standing over him. They chalked it up to panic, stress, low visibility, grief. But I know what I saw in that fog-soaked house, and I know I wasn't meant to see it. Now, every November when the fog starts to creep in, I close all the blinds and tell myself I'll sleep. But I never do. I lie awake listening. Because sometimes, just before dawn, something brushes against the side of the house. Soft, slow, like fog testing the walls to see if it can find its way inside again. Story 3. Submitted by Jonah S. from Elk Bend, Idaho. I used to work nights at a tiny riverside campground outside Elk Bend, just a dirt pull-off with 10 RV hookups, a bathhouse, and a bait shack that doubled as the office. In summer, families packed the place, but once September rolled in and the steelhead vanished upstream, the crowds left too. By October, the only people who came through were hunters, drifters, and truckers, who needed a few quiet hours before pushing north. My job was simple: clean the bathhouse, keep the generator fueled, and make sure no one started campfires during burn bans. It was lonely work, but I liked the solitude. The river sounded different at night, deeper, almost conversational. The night I'm about to tell you about happened during the first deep fog of the season. The Salmon River gets these ground-hugging fog banks late at night, cold and wet enough to soak your clothes within minutes. Locals call it the river's breath, which would have felt poetic if it didn't make visibility drop to nothing. I was in the bait shack around 2 a.m., restocking shelves, when I heard footsteps outside. Slow, dragging footsteps on gravel. The kind that tell you the person walking doesn't care who hears them. I figured it was a late arrival. Happens sometimes, people pulling in from the highway looking for any place to sleep. But when I stepped outside, the fog was so thick my flashlight beam just smeared white across the air. I called out, "Hello? Need help finding a site?" No answer, but the footsteps were still there, just beyond the reach of the light. Crunch, drag, crunch, drag. I tried again, louder. "You all right out there?" Then the footsteps stopped. I waited, listening. Even the river felt quiet, like everything was holding its breath. I scanned my light across the campground, but all I could see were vague shapes of picnic tables and power posts. The fog pressed in close, so thick it felt like it was listening too. Then my radio, just a cheap walkie clipped to my belt, crackled with static. No one else was working that shift. There shouldn't have been anyone to speak on the other end, but beneath the static I heard breathing, long, uneven breaths, like someone standing too close to the receiver. I pressed the button and said, "Who is this?" The breathing stopped. Silence. Then a soft hiss, like someone whispering my name through clenched teeth. "Jonah." I dropped the radio. I don't mind admitting that. It fell into the wet gravel, hissing with more static until finally it went dead. I crouched to pick it up, and that's when I noticed something near the ground. A trail of wet footprints leading toward the bathhouse. Bare footprints. The toes pointed inward, like whoever made them walked with their feet angled unnaturally. I followed them. Don't ask why, curiosity or stubbornness or plain stupidity, and they led right to the men's side of the bathhouse. The door was slightly open, swinging in slow motion like someone had pushed it a few seconds before I arrived. I pushed it all the way open. Inside, the single fluorescent tube flickered weakly. The mirrors were fogged over, dripping with condensation. I stepped in carefully, my boots squeaking on the wet tile. "Hello?" I called. A stall door creaked open at the far end. Then another. Then another. The sound echoed, metallic and deliberate. When I reached the last stall, I saw something on the floor. A set of clothes, jeans, flannel shirt, socks, all laid out flat, like a person had stepped out of them in one perfect motion. I picked up the shirt. It was damp, almost slimy. Then I heard a noise that still makes my stomach clench when I think about it. A breath. Not human. Too long, too hollow, like air being pulled through a deep, empty pipe. I jerked my head up. In the mirror behind me, where the fogged glass showed only hazy forms, I saw movement, a shape standing behind my left shoulder. Taller than me, longer in the limbs. Its outline flickered like it was struggling to stay solid in the human world. But the worst part? The reflection didn't move when I did. My body locked up. For a moment, I genuinely couldn't breathe. Then the fluorescence died entirely. Pitch black. I scrambled backward, hit the wall, and bolted for the door. Behind me, I heard the stalls slamming shut in rapid succession. Bang, 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 like something was sprinting after me. I didn't look back. I sprinted through the fog, tripping over fire pits and tent stakes until I reached my truck by the highway entrance. When I turned the key, the engine coughed twice, hesitated, then roared to life. As I pulled out onto the empty road, the fog parted just enough that I could see the shape standing in the middle of the campground behind me. Its body wavered, like heat rising off asphalt. Too tall, too thin, with arms that hung nearly to its knees. Its head tilted as though listening to the engine. And as the truck's headlights passed over it, its body dissolved into the fog itself, like it had never been a solid thing to begin with. I didn't go back for my gear, or my last paycheck. The campground owner emailed me 2 days later saying someone broke into the bathhouse, tore mirrors off the walls, and left the generator drained. He asked if I'd been there that night. I didn't respond. I moved to Boise within a week, and I haven't gone back to Elk Bend since. But sometimes, when the weather turns cold and the fog rolls down from the foothills, I hear something in the distance, a hollow, dragging breath carried on the air. and every time I swear it's getting closer. Story 4. Submitted by Lila P. from Greenville, Alabama. I used to take the long way home from my aunt's place. Everyone said I was foolish for it. The direct route along Highway 10 was faster, smoother, better lit. But I always preferred the old county back roads. They wrapped through stretches of pine forest and low farmland where you could smell the earth cooling after sunset, where the only company was cicadas humming and porch lights winking through the trees. It felt honest out there. My story takes place on one of those roads, County Road 47, a place I'd driven 1,000 times without ever thinking twice. It was late September, the air just beginning to thin into fall. I'd stayed later than usual, helping my aunt can tomatoes, and by the time I left her place, the sky had gone from pink to that deep purple blue that never lasts long enough. I noticed the fog as soon as I turned off the highway. It wasn't a thick blanket at first, just low wisps floating above the ditches, but the deeper I went into the pines, the heavier it got. Within minutes it had climbed into the branches like smoke from a fire you couldn't see. My high beams made it worse, so I switched them off and let the regular headlights carve out 2 narrow tunnels in front of me. Even then, I kept tapping my brakes, not because I was scared, but because I couldn't shake the feeling I was driving into something that didn't want me there. About a mile from my house, I saw movement on the right shoulder, a person, standing completely still. I slowed to a crawl. It was a woman, at least I thought it was, tall and slim, her head lifted like she was looking at the tops of the trees. She wore a long dress that looked pale in my headlights, though the fog made the colors strange. Her hair was dark and loose, hanging past her shoulders. I rolled down the window halfway. "Ma'am, you need help?" She turned her head just a fraction, like she'd heard me but wasn't sure where the sound came from. I eased closer. "Ma'am?" Then she faced me fully. I can't explain it well. Her face wasn't wrong exactly. It just wasn't complete. Like someone had sketched the idea of a face rather than finished it. The features were there, but soft, unfinished, like fog given a human outline. Her eyes looked too wide, reflecting my headlights without catching the light. A cold wave rolled up my arms, raising goosebumps under my sleeves. She stepped toward the car. Every instinct screamed at me to drive, but I froze. Maybe it was politeness, maybe shock, maybe the belief that danger shouldn't look so calm. She reached the passenger door and placed her hand on the window. Her fingers were long and narrow, almost delicate, but the fog around her clung to her skin, swirling in slow, deliberate patterns like it was part of her. Through the glass, she mouthed something. I couldn't hear it. I couldn't even tell if she had a voice. But she kept mouthing it, her breath fogging the glass in quick, shallow bursts. "Leave." I watched the word form and fade, until the window was damp with it. My hands finally reacted before my brain did. I shifted into reverse, the gears grinding loud in the quiet, and the woman's head twitched sharply to the side, as if the noise hurt her. That's when I realized she wasn't alone. Something was moving behind her. Not a person, something lower to the ground, creeping along the edge of the road like it was testing how close it could get. At first I thought it was a dog or a coyote, but the motion was wrong. Too fluid, too smooth, like fog sliding over the earth, trying on shapes it hadn't mastered yet. The woman's head snapped toward it. The two shapes, hers and the lower one, seemed connected, like they were listening to the same silent command. My rear bumper hit loose gravel, jerking the car sideways. She pressed her palm flat against the window. Not knocking, just holding it there. Her face softened for a moment, the way someone looks when they're trying to remember a word. Then she mouthed something new. Not leave, not go, stay. Her jaw stretched strangely around the shape of the word, like the inside of her mouth wasn't built for it. Behind her, the low creeping shape began unfolding, rising, stretching upward inch by inch until it towered over her shoulders. I couldn't make out its form, just long, draping limbs that swayed like wet fabric and a head tilting in slow, curious arcs. The fog thickened around them, breathing in and out in a way fog shouldn't breathe. My body finally obeyed the terror. I slammed the car into drive and stomped the gas. Gravel spat out from under the tires and the car lurched forward. I didn't dare look in the mirror. I only stared straight ahead, through the tunnels of light my headlights carved in the gray. But as the car picked up speed, I heard something behind me. A tap on the trunk. Then another. Then a dragging sound along the side panel. Too long to be a hand, too slow to be an animal. I didn't breathe until I saw the first fence post of my property appear through the fog. My porch light was glowing like a star swallowed in milk. I turned into the driveway too fast, the wheels fishtailing, but I didn't care. I didn't stop until I was parked with the front bumper nearly touching the porch steps. I killed the engine. Silence. The fog around the yard drifted in small, lazy curls, nothing like the living mass on the road. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd outrun it. Maybe it had melted back into the pines. Then I saw the reflection. The passenger side window was still fogged from where she'd breathed against it. And there, smeared into the condensation by her fingertip, was a single word traced in looping, unsteady letters: home. The next morning, when the fog burned away, I checked the car. Tiny streaks of moisture ran in long arcs across the trunk and back doors, trails like fingertips dragged with care. And on the gravel near the road, where the fog had been thickest, I found prints. Not footprints, just impressions, like something had leaned close to watch me leave. I still take County Road 47 sometimes. Habit is a stubborn thing, but I never drive it in fog anymore. And I never look at the shoulders of the road, because fog has a way of remembering what passes through it, and I'm afraid one day, when it rises just right, she'll be standing there again, half-formed, listening, waiting to see if I've finally come home like she asked.